when my dad dismissed my digital art, saying, "No one's going to pay real money for pictures on a computer," I secretly built a $5 billion empire. At our family reunion, I revealed the truth, and watching their shock was worth every year of hiding my success. Hey, my name is Sophia Sullivan, and I'm 37 years old. For the past 15 years, I've been living a carefully constructed lie. While my family believed I was a struggling artist barely making ends meet, I was actually building one of the most successful digital art empires in history. The moment of revelation was about to arrive, and I couldn't wait to see their faces. The invitation to the annual Sullivan family reunion sat on my Manhattan penthouse desk, its gold-embossed lettering catching the morning light. 15 years of carefully maintained disappointment were about to end. My phone buzzed with the email that had triggered everything. Forbes, 30 under 40 announcement featuring my company. The article would publish tomorrow, just 2 days before the reunion. My facade was about to shatter completely. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Miss Sullivan, your brother Marcus is on line 1 again." Of course he was. He'd been calling nonstop since the press release went to major publications. I picked up the phone with a smile. "Hello, Marcus." "What the hell, Sophia?" He didn't bother with pleasantries. "I just got a call from Business Insider asking for comment about my billionaire sister. Want to explain that?" I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Manhattan skyline I now partially owned. "I guess you'll have to wait for the article like everyone else." "Cut the crap," he snapped. "All these years you've been letting us think you were barely getting by. Mom and Dad have been worried sick about you." I couldn't help but laugh. "Worried? Is that what you call it? The constant lectures about getting a real job? The snide comments about how I'm wasting my potential? They were trying to help. No, they were trying to control me, just like they controlled you." Silence fell on the other end. Marcus had always been the golden child, following our parents' carefully planned path. Business school, MBA, joining our father's investment firm. "Just tell me one thing," he finally said. "How long have you been hiding this?" I stood up and walked to the window, watching one of my 3 private helicopters land on a nearby building's helipad. "Remember when I moved to that tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn? When you all mocked my digital art nonsense? That was 15 years ago." "That's right. Everyone thought I was crazy, throwing away my finance degree to doodle on computers, as Dad called it. But what none of you knew was that I'd already sold my first NFT collection for $50,000. $50,000? Back then? And 6 months later, I sold another for $200,000. By the time Dad was telling everyone at Christmas dinner that I was going through a phase, I had my first million. I could hear him struggling to process this. "But you still borrowed money from Mom and Dad for rent. You drove that beat-up Honda until last year." "I never borrowed money from them, Marcus. I asked them to invest in my company. They refused loudly and repeatedly. The Honda was a choice, not a necessity, just like this penthouse was a choice, and the private jet, and everything else I kept hidden from all of you." "Private jet?" His voice cracked. "Jesus, Sophia, how rich are you exactly?" I smiled, remembering all the family dinners where they treated me like the poor relative. The way my younger sister Olivia would ostentatiously pick up the check, making sure everyone knew she was helping her struggling artist sister. The Forbes article will say $3 billion, but that's conservative. The real number is closer to $5 billion. The sound Marcus made was somewhere between a gasp and a choke. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a board meeting. Oh, and Marcus, I'll see you at the family reunion. I'm thinking of making quite an entrance." I hung up and pressed the intercom. "Rebecca, is everything set for the reunion?" Yes, Miss Sullivan. The jet is fueled and ready. Car service is arranged for all family members. Rolls-Royces as requested. The venue has been updated to your private island, and NDAs have been prepared for all staff. Perfect. For 15 years, I'd played the role they expected. The artistic black sheep who couldn't handle the real world, the daughter who needed constant reminders about financial responsibility, the sister who was pitied and patronized at every family gathering. But not this time. My mind wandered back to the day that started it all, the moment I decided to hide my success from my family. I was 22, fresh out of college with a finance degree they'd paid for, expecting me to use it at my father's firm. Digital art isn't real art, Sophia, my father's voice had boomed across the dinner table. And this NFT thing, it's fad nonsense, a scam. No one's going to pay real money for pictures on a computer. I tried to explain my vision, but he cut me off. I don't want to hear about your little hobby. Either you come work for the firm like we planned, or you're on your own. No more support, no safety net. My mother had reached across the table, patting my hand condescendingly. Sweetie, we just want what's best for you. You need stability, a real career. I looked around at their faces. My father's disappointment, my mother's concerned frown, Marcus's smug smile, Olivia's barely concealed disdain. That was the moment I made my decision. I wouldn't tell them about the $50,000 sale, or the galleries wanting to represent me, or the tech companies reaching out about collaborations. You're right, I'd said, standing up. I need to figure this out on my own. 2 weeks later, I moved into the smallest, cheapest studio apartment I could find in Brooklyn. My family assumed I was struggling, too proud to admit defeat. In reality, I was building an empire. The first year was intense. I worked 18-hour days developing my artistic style, learning blockchain technology, building connections in the crypto art world. My first major collection, Digital Dreams in Binary, sold out in hours for $1 million. I invested every penny back into the business, hiring developers, creating new platforms for artists, innovating in ways the traditional art world couldn't imagine. But every time I visited home, I played the part. Drove my old Honda, wore simple clothes, lived the struggling artist role perfectly. At least let me help with your rent, my mother would offer, while my father shook his head in disappointment. No thanks, Mom, I'm doing fine. And I was more than fine. By year 1, my net worth hit $10 million. By year 3, $100 million. But to my family, I was still just Sophia, the dreamer who couldn't face reality. The Forbes article dropped at exactly 6 a.m. Eastern. I was already awake in my home office, watching the chaos unfold across my screens. Revolutionary digital art, how Sophia Sullivan built a multi-billion-dollar empire in secret. The headline was accompanied by a photo I'd specifically chosen. Me standing in front of my most successful NFT collection, wearing clothes that cost more than my sister's monthly salary. The article didn't just reveal my wealth, it detailed every success I'd hidden for 15 years. The revolutionary blockchain platforms, the partnerships with major tech companies, the art pieces selling for millions each. My phone exploded with notifications. The family group chat was in meltdown. Olivia said, "Is this for real? $3? Oh, billion?" Marcus replied. "I tried to warn you all yesterday." Mom wrote, "Sophia, please answer your phone." Dad texted, "This must be some kind of mistake." I muted the chat and pulled up my emails. Hundreds of interview requests, investment opportunities, speaking engagements. But one email caught my eye from my father's business partner, Albert Brennan. "Sophia, I believe we need to discuss potential synergies between Sullivan Investments and your digital art platforms. Your father may have mentioned some concerns, but I assure you we can be quite flexible." I laughed out loud. 3 years ago, I'd approached their firm about a partnership. Albert had personally shown me the door, saying they didn't deal in internet pictures. My intercom buzzed. "Miss Sullivan, your mother is in the lobby. She's quite insistent. I checked the security feed. There was my mother, still perfectly put together in her designer suit, but with unfamiliar wildness in her eyes as she argued with the security guard. Let her up, I sighed. Time to face at least one family member. The private elevator opened directly into my penthouse. My mother stepped out, then froze, taking in her surroundings. The vast open space, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, the original Basquiat on the wall that probably cost more than their house. "Sophia," she breathed, voice unsteady. "What is all this?" "This is my home, Mom, the real one, not the small apartment I keep for family visits." She walked to the window, her heels clicking on the marble floor. How did you?" 15 years, I said, pouring her coffee. "Since the day Dad said my digital art would never amount to anything." She turned, face showing confusion and hurt. "But you struggled. We saw it, the tiny apartment, the old car, borrowing money for rent." "I never borrowed money," I corrected her. "I asked you and Dad to invest in my company. There's a difference. Everything else, the apartment, the car, that was all theater." "Theater?" Her voice rose. "You've been lying to us for 15 years?" "No, Mom. I let you see what you wanted to see. You all were so convinced I was failing that you never bothered to look closer." She sank into one of my Italian leather chairs, looking suddenly old. "Does anyone else in the family know?" "No one." "Well, Marcus found out yesterday when the press release went out." I walked to my desk and pulled out a file. "Here's something that might interest you. The investment opportunity I presented to Dad 3 years ago. If he had invested the $1 million I requested, his share would be worth roughly $100 million today." Her hands trembled as she took the file. He said you wanted a handout, that you were too proud to admit your art wasn't working out. And you believed him, just like you believed everything about my struggling artist life. Tell me, Mom, in 15 years, did any of you ever come to one of my shows, check out my work, even Google my name? She couldn't meet my eyes. That's what I thought. I walked to the window, looking down at the city. The family reunion is tomorrow. I've made some changes to the arrangements. Changes. I bought out the entire resort where it was supposed to be held. Instead, everyone will be picked up by my cars and taken to my jet. We'll be having the reunion on my island. Your island? In the Caribbean. I bought it last year when I closed my first billion-dollar deal. I turned to face her. And Mom, this time I won't be sitting quietly while everyone talks about their successes. This time, I have some things to say. She stood up, smoothing her skirt with shaking hands. Your father, when he sees all this, he'll finally have to admit that his little girl, playing with computer pictures, built something bigger than his entire family legacy. I smiled. And that's just the beginning. I walked her to the elevator, but before she could step in, I added one last thing. "Oh, and Mom, that Bentley you've been dreaming about but Dad says is too expensive. I bought 3 last month just because I could." The elevator doors closed on her shocked face. As soon as she was gone, I called my assistant. "Rebecca, is everything ready for the reunion?" "Yes, Miss Sullivan. The island staff is prepared. The documentation packages have been assembled for each family member, showing exactly when they dismissed your investment opportunities and what those shares would be worth today. The video presentation of your success timeline is ready." Perfect. I picked up my phone and finally replied to the family group chat with a single message. "Looking forward to seeing everyone at the reunion. Dress appropriately for a private island. Transportation will be provided." Then I opened my laptop to check the market. The Forbes article had sent my company's stock soaring. Another billion added to my net worth before breakfast. I thought about my father, probably sitting in his office right now trying to understand how his failing daughter had quietly become one of the richest people in the country. about my sister Olivia, who loved bragging about her six-figure salary and vacation home in the Hamptons, realizing I could buy her entire life with what I made in interest each day. The reunion was going to be very interesting indeed. The day of the Sullivan family reunion dawned clear and bright. I stood on the tarmac of my private airfield, watching 3 Rolls-Royces approach in formation. My family had arrived. The cars stopped and doors opened. First came my father, his usual commanding presence somehow diminished. My mother, still looking shaken from our meeting. Marcus, Olivia, and various aunts, uncles, and cousins followed, all wearing expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed resentment. And there, front and center, sat my gleaming private jet with Sullivan Digital Empire emblazoned on its side in elegant lettering. "Welcome, everyone," I said, my voice carrying across the tarmac. "I trust the ride was comfortable?" "Sophia," my father stepped forward, trying to regain his authoritative tone. "This is unnecessary. We could have had a perfectly good reunion at the resort." I smiled. "The resort was too public, Dad. Besides, I think it's time for some real family bonding on my island." "Your island?" Olivia muttered, clutching her designer handbag. "Of course you have an island." The flight was interesting, to say the least. As my family settled into the luxurious cabin, their eyes darted everywhere, taking in the opulent details. Solid gold fixtures, rare art pieces, vintage champagne served by impeccably trained staff. "Is that a real Picasso?" Aunt Patricia whispered, staring at artwork mounted on the cabin wall. "Yes," I replied casually. "I bought it last year, along with a few others." My father cleared his throat. "Sophia, perhaps we should discuss—" "We'll discuss everything when we land, Dad. For now, enjoy the flight. The champagne is particularly good, cost more than your company's quarterly profits." He flinched. "Good." 2 hours later, we began our descent. Through the windows, my private island came into view. 300 acres of tropical paradise, with a state-of-the-art resort complex at its center. And there, visible from the air just as I'd planned, was my name in letters large enough to be seen from space. As we landed, I heard Olivia gasp. The helipad was surrounded by displays showing my most successful NFT collections, each with sale prices prominently displayed, millions upon millions of dollars in digital art projected onto massive screens. "Welcome to Sullivan Island," I announced as we disembarked. "My own little piece of paradise." "Little?" Marcus choked out. The resort complex sprawled before us, a masterpiece of modern architecture seamlessly blended with natural beauty. "Everyone's rooms have been assigned," I continued. "You'll find some reading material waiting for you. I suggest you review it before dinner." The reading material was carefully curated for each family member. For my father, documentation of every investment opportunity he'd dismissed, along with current valuations. For Olivia, a comparison of her annual salary versus what I made in interest each day. For Marcus, details of how his firm had lost millions by refusing to work with my company. I gave them an hour to settle in and digest the information. Then I had them summoned to the main dining room. The room was a masterpiece of design with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. A massive table dominated the space, each place setting probably worth more than most people's cars. And on every wall, that Forbes article, beautifully framed. My family filed in slowly, looking shell-shocked. They'd changed for dinner, but even their expensive clothes looked somehow inadequate in these surroundings. "Please sit," I gestured to the table. "We have a lot to discuss." "Sophia," my father began as soon as everyone was seated, "I think I speak for everyone when I say we're surprised." "Surprised?" I laughed softly. "That's an interesting word choice. Not sorry that you dismissed me. Not regretful that you missed out, just surprised." "We didn't know," my mother said quietly. "You didn't want to know," I corrected her. "Every time I tried to tell you about my work, you changed the subject. Every time I offered investment opportunities, you dismissed them. You were so convinced I was failing that you couldn't see success even when it was right in front of you. But the apartment, Olivia interjected. The old car. All those times I paid for dinner because you thought I couldn't afford it, I finished for her. Did you enjoy that, Olivia? Playing the successful sister, making sure everyone knew you were helping out poor, struggling Sophia? She had the grace to look ashamed. Let me show you something, I said, pressing a button. Screens descended from the ceiling, displaying a timeline of my success alongside their dismissive comments over the years. 2008. Digital art isn't real art, Sophia. Dad, my first collection sells for $50,000. 2010. When are you going to get a real job? Mom, company valuation hits $10 million. 2015. At least I can afford to help my sister out, Olivia. Net worth passes $500 million. 2020. We don't invest in internet pictures, Dad's firm. Company valuation reaches $1 billion. Every doubt, every dismissal, every condescending comment, I said quietly. I remembered them all, and with each one I built something bigger. Why? My father's voice cracked. Why hide it? Because you needed to learn something. All of you did. Success doesn't look just one way. Innovation doesn't follow your predetermined path. And sometimes the child you wrote off as a failure might just be the one who succeeds beyond your wildest dreams. I stood up, walking to the window. Do you know what the hardest part was? Not the secrecy, not pretending to struggle. It was watching you all celebrate mediocrity while dismissing true innovation. Mediocrity? Marcus bristled. Yes, mediocrity. You followed Dad's safe path, Marcus. Got the job he wanted you to get, made the safe investments. And you, I turned to Olivia, bragged about your six-figure salary while I was making that much in minutes. That's enough. My father stood up. You've made your point. We were wrong. Is that what you want to hear? No, Dad. What I want is for you to understand. Really understand. I gestured to the luxury around us. This isn't about money. It's about vision. The vision you couldn't see because you were too busy clinging to the past. I pressed another button, and new images appeared on the screens. My latest project, a revolutionary platform that would transform how digital art was created, bought, and sold. This launches next month, I said. Conservative estimates put its value at $10 billion. I'm showing you this because for once, I want you to see what I'm building before it happens. No more dismissing it. No more doubting. The room fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Finally, my mother spoke. We're proud of you, Sophia. We should have been proud all along. Thank you, Mom. But I didn't do this for your pride. I did it because it was my dream, my vision. I smiled. And now it's my empire. So what happens now? Marcus asked. Now we have dinner as a family, but this time we'll do it my way. No more pretending. No more hiding. And tomorrow I'll show you exactly what your daughter, sister, and niece built while you weren't paying attention. I raised my glass. To the truth. Finally. They raised their glasses, looking somewhat dazed. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of gourmet food, fine wine, and gradually warming conversations. My family was beginning to see me, really see me, for the first time in 15 years. As they retired to their rooms that night, I stayed in the dining room looking out at the moonlit ocean. My assistant, Rebecca, appeared at my side. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. The big reveal? I thought about the looks on their faces, the shock, the realization, the gradual understanding. Yes, I said. But not for the reasons I expected. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about finally being free to be completely myself. Later that night, I found a note slipped under my door in my father's handwriting. I was wrong. Not just about the business, but about everything. You didn't just succeed, you revolutionized an entire industry. I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner. Dad. I placed the note in a frame right next to my first NFT sale receipt for $50,000, a reminder of where I started and how far I'd come. The next morning, as I watched my family gather for breakfast, their attitudes completely changed, I realized something important. Success isn't just about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in the revelation of success, but in the quiet knowledge that you built something extraordinary, while everyone else was busy doubting you. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Sullivan Digital Empire announces revolutionary new platform. Stock soars 300%. The future was calling, and this time my family would watch it unfold in real time. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just the truth, finally, and the empire I'd built one dismissed dream at a time.